One of the classes that we'll be offering this next semester as a milestone course is a class that brings together history, political science, technology, and it's called Technology and Empire. So I want to talk to you just briefly today about some of the ideas that might come up in that class. Now, you might think about empires, you think about great visionaries. You think about people like Christopher Columbus, who sailed the ocean blue and knew the world wasn't flat, and the stories that we tell of him. Or the stories of Genghis Khan, who swept across the steppes of Asia and created an empire from a small country in a far distant land of Mongolia. Or you might think of Julius Caesar bringing together his vision of a new Rome to set forth the foundation for all of Western civilization. But I'd like to argue today that really it's not so much about the heroes, the visionaries, or even the inventors of the technologies, but rather societies that organize themselves and their technologies to create empires. And so I'm going to use examples of the Mongolian Empire, the example of the European colonization of the New World in North and South America, and of the Roman conquest of Europe and points beyond, to try to point out how technologies are combined with social organizations to really make a difference in history. So we'll start with Genghis Khan. Genghis Khan and the Mongolian Empire rising in the 13th century, sweeping across Asia, was really not so much any one silver bullet, so to speak, metaphorically. It was a combination of things like the composite bow that they started to use that would allow them to project firepower much further. But that composite bow wouldn't be so good without the stirrup, something that had been invented in maybe the 7th century in France, but adopted by the Mongols. They invaded China, and from China picked up gunpowder, they picked up explosives, which they later used on the other side of Asia to scare people in Europe who had never seen such things, and perhaps the first example of shock and awe campaigns, right? And so they sort of moved across the steppes in this way. And their organization, the way in which they allowed local organizations to keep some of their autonomy, but then incorporate things like the steel that they found in Saudi Arabia and the curved scimitar to be an effective fighting weapon. The same could be said of Christopher Columbus as he set out across the ocean blue. He sat on the backs of inventions, again, perhaps starting with inventors long lost to history of the magnetic compass, which we have evidence of all the way back into China, maybe as early as the 7th century. But by the end of the 15th century, combining that with the sextant, with the map, with sailing ships, Christopher Columbus was able to leave the shoreline and know that he could come back. And that knowledge was really powerful. That knowledge, I would argue, is what creates the empire. He also had the ability to use modern weaponry on a people who had never encountered such things. Maybe it's a single-shot musket, but when that musket fires, you would have a great shock and awe once again. And finally, you think about the Romans, and my colleagues like to tell me that the Romans never really invented anything. They borrowed everything. The Romans borrowed their pantheon from the Greeks. They borrowed their ideas from Carthage of sailing ships and so forth. They borrowed a number of their fighting tactics from the Greeks as well. But what the Romans were really good at was organizing their society towards the vision of empire. So if there were visionaries in Rome, in Mongolia, in Spain at the time, trying to create these huge empires, the visionaries weren't really the leaders, but more the people. And we hope that maybe here at Colorado Mesa University, as people take a milestone course, it's not so much that we're inspiring the next generation of leadership visionaries, as that we believe every single person in the society that is the alumni of Mesa State creates this new empire for the new 21st century. Thank you.